Welcome to the exam review of the 2021 National Senior Certificate Mathematics Paper 1 exam. In this video, I'll give a brief overview of each of the questions in this paper. This video might be stressful for some people, especially if you were the one writing this paper. Then if you are that kind of a person that will get stressed looking at the answers, then I'd advise you to not watch this video. Please note that I will not give detailed solution since this is an exam review, and please subscribe to be notified of future exam revision sessions and net Q&A sessions. Okay, so the paper kicks off with an algebra question. And the first part of this question requires us to solve for x. So as you can see, let me get my pen. As you can see, the first equation we are required to solve is a quadratic equation. And good news here, it is already in a form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. So all you need to do is to factorize and find your solution. So if you factorize here, you're going to have x minus 6 into x plus 4 is equal to 0. Then that means that x is equal to 6 or x is equal to 4. That is your solution. That was very straightforward. And the second equation is also a quadratic equation, but notice the hint here. The examiners are saying correct to 2 decimal places. That means you won't be able to factorize this equation. So remember, if you can't factorize, then you have to use your quadratic formula. X is equal to negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac divided by 2a. So everything is divided by 2a. So you can see from this equation that a is 2, b is minus 3, and c is also minus 3. So if you substitute everything in your quadratic formula, you're going to get that x is equal to 2.18, or your x is going to be negative 0.69 if you round off to 2 decimal places. Now the next type of question we are required to solve for x is an inequality. So the first thing here, you're going to write it in the standard form, which will be x squared plus 5x plus 4 is less than 0. Okay, so what the examiners are looking for, they're looking for the values of x for which this quadratic equation is less than 0. So you will see that your critical values are minus 4 and minus 1. So we want this to be less than 0. So we want this to be below. So x should be between minus 1 and minus 4. Okay, so that will be your solution. And the fourth type of equation we are required to solve is a third equation. Well, I'm sure you know that if you have a third equation, then most sensible, or the first thing we do is to square on both sides in order to form a quadratic equation. So if you square on both sides here, you're going to have x plus 28 is equal to 4 minus 4x plus x squared. So this means that you're going to have the quadratic equation x squared minus 5x minus 24, if you simplify this, okay, is equal to 0. So if you factorize, you will find that x is equal to 8 or x is equal to minus 3. But be very careful here. You cannot leave your answer here because one of the solutions will not satisfy the original equation given. So you will notice that x is equal to 8 doesn't satisfy it. Okay, so we won't take it, but we're going to take the solution x is equal to minus 3. All right. Now 1.2, which is the second part of the question, requires us to solve a simultaneous equation. So we're required to solve for x and y. Now, as you know, and you have been practicing, the first thing you're going to look for here is a linear equation. And there is our linear equation. Now, please don't make y the subject of the formula. You're going to make your life miserable, but make x the subject of the formula. So x will be equal to 2y minus 3. So you come to this equation, wherever you see an x, you're going to put 2y minus 3. Okay, then you're going to find the 2 point of intersection to be minus 1, 1 and minus 2 half. Okay, so these are your solution. Now the last part of question 1 is a little bit exciting. It's a short, beautiful question asking us to prove that x is a non-real number. Wow, if you look at the solution given, x will only be a non-real number if n squared minus 4mp is less than 0. Okay, so how can I prove that this is less than 0? Okay, now you are given something interesting here. The examiner told you that m, n, and p in the order they are given form a geometric sequence. Now, if they form a geometric sequence, then you must know that n divided by m is equal to p divided by n. So term 2 minus term 1 is equal to term 3. Sorry, term 2 divided by term 1 is equal to term 3 divided by term 2. Now from here, you can see that n squared is equal to mp. Now if I multiply by 4 on both sides, you can see that 4n squared is equal to 4mp. Okay, so in the expression, in this expression, which I want to prove it, I can say n squared, and instead of 4mp, I'm going to substitute 4n squared because they're equivalent. Okay, now this is equal to minus 3n squared. Now n is a positive real number. So a positive real number multiplied by negative 3 will always be less than 0. Therefore, x is a non-real number. Now this is quite a tricky question. Please don't waste time on a formal question if you can't get your head around it, but it was a beautiful question. And on to question 2. Okay, now question 2 is testing sequences and series, and specifically it is testing the geometric series. Okay, so we are given x plus 90 plus 81, and the first question they're asking you is to find the value of x. Wow, they told you that this is a geometric series, so term 2 divided by term 1 must be equal to term 3 divided by term 2. So what I mean is 90 over x must be equal to 81 over 90. And here you're going to find that your x is 100. And then 2.2, they say show that the sum to infinity is given by this expression. Now be very careful here. If you use, actually it's not the sum to infinity, it's the sum of the first n terms. So they're saying show that the sum of the first n terms given by this expression. Now there are two expressions we usually use here. We usually use Sn is equal to a into r minus 1 into r to the power n minus 1 over r minus 1. If you use this formula here, you're going to see it's going to take you a little bit longer to show this. So please avoid it if you can. So another expression we have is a into 1 minus r to the n over 1 minus r. Okay, now your common ratio, since I've got that x is equal to 100, then my common ratio will be given by 90 over 100, which is equal to 9 over 10. Okay, so my A is 100. My common ratio is 9 over 10, which can be written as 0.9 to the power n divided by 1 minus 0.9. Okay, now you're going to punch this in your calculator, and voila, you're going to get 1000 times 1 minus 0.9 to the power n. Okay, which is what you are required to prove. Okay, now for some reasons, let's say you were having a bad day and you were not able to find this value of x. Please do not give up. Okay, in this case, if you couldn't find the value of x, assume any value of x and continue with the question rather than giving up this 4 marks here. So please do not give up. So the last part of question 2 says that hence or otherwise calculate the sum to infinity. While you have got the sum of the first n terms, now if you look at the expression for the sum of the first n term, you will see that 0.9 to the power n approaches 0 as n approaches infinity. So the sum to infinity, infinity terms. So from the formula derived in 2.2, you can see that 0.9 to the power n will approach 0 as n approaches infinity. Okay, let me reduce the size of the pen. So if this approaches 0, that means that the sum to infinity will be equal to 1000. Now, that is using the hence. If you were confused by this hence, then you can use the otherwise. The otherwise is simple using the sum to infinity formula. So sum to infinity formula is equal to A over 1 minus R, which is 100 over 1 minus 9 over 10, and the answer will still be 1000. So a very straightforward question. Okay, let's move on to question 3. Now, question 3 is also testing sequences in series, but it is testing the quadratic number pattern. So we are given the quadratic number pattern here, 145, 1 minus 122, 101, and they're asking you for term number 4. Well, that is straightforward. So if we have 145 and we have minus 122 and 101, so the first difference here will be 23, 21, right? And the second difference here will be minus 2. So if you subtract minus 2 from 21, you'll get 19, then add it to negative 101, you'll get minus 82. So your term 4 is minus 82. Okay, very straightforward. Now they say that show that the general term of this pattern is given by this expression. Okay, very straightforward again. As long as you remember that 2a is equal to minus 2 and 3a plus b is equal to 23 and a plus b plus c is equal to negative 145, then you're going to get your a to be minus 1, your b to be 26, and your c to be minus 170. So that is by solving these equations. Very straightforward equations. Okay, now 3.3 is a little bit tricky and requires quite a bit of thinking. They are saying between which two consecutive terms of the quadratic number pattern will there be a difference of minus 121. Now, you have to think a little bit here. Now, they're asking between which two terms of the quadratic number pattern will there be a difference of minus 121. You know that this minus 121 is actually an arithmetic sequence. Now, take 23 for instance. 23 is between term 1 and term 2. Okay, so it's between term 2 and term 1. 21 is between term 3 and term 2. Which two terms will I subtract and get minus 121? Well, first of all, the first thing we have to find here is to find the position of minus 121. Okay, how do we find that? We're going to say 23 plus n minus 1d is equal to minus 121. So that is simple. That is simply solving Tn is equal to minus 121. Okay, so you'll find the position there. Your n will be equal to 73, which means the 73 term of the first difference will give you minus 121. Then in this particular case, if you actually think about it, if I take 1074 and I subtract 1073, then I'm going to get minus 121. So between the 74th term and the 73rd term of the quadratic pattern, I will get a minus 121. Okay, you can also check this by yourself. Now the last part of this question is a little bit exciting. They are saying what value must be added to each term in the number pattern so that the value of the maximum, now the key word here, maximum term in the new number pattern will be 1. So at this moment in time, the general term is minus n squared plus 26n minus 17. I want to add something here, and I want the maximum term to be 1. Okay, maximum reminds me of calculus. So if I differentiate this expression, then calculate n, then I'll get the position where I will find the maximum term. Okay, let us do that. So if I find the derivative and equate it to 0, I'm going to have minus 2n plus 26. If I take this, because I'm dealing with the maximum, if I take this derivative and equate it to 0, I'm going to find n to be equal to 13. So what does this mean? This means the term number 13 will be the maximum term. Okay, so term number 13 will be the maximum term. Well, but they told you the maximum term. They told you it is equal to 1. So what does this mean? This means that minus okay, so if you take 13, so this is calculus, but in the context of sequences in series, okay, which I think is quite interesting. I don't know about you. So minus 13 squared plus 26 times 13 minus 170 plus q is equal to 1. So this is the maximum position. If I differentiate and equate it to 0 is the position, but the maximum term is found by substituting n to the original expression. But they told me that the maximum term is 1. So the only thing I have to do here is to solve for q, and you'll find that q is 2. A very interesting question. And on to question 4. Now, question 4 is testing the arithmetic number pattern, or the linear pattern as they say here. Now, the first question they ask you here is to determine T51. Now, 51 is very far, so I think it's best if we find the Tn formula. Okay, so if you find the Tn formula, the Tn formula will be 2n plus 3. But you are looking for T51, which means wherever you see an n, you're going to put a 51. So I'm going to have 2 times 51 plus 3, and that is going to give me 105. Now, the second part of the question says calculate the sum of the first 51 terms. while the sum of the first n terms of an arithmetic sequence or linear pattern, as they say here, is equal to n over 2 times 2a plus n minus 1d. So if you punch in the numbers, I'm looking for the sum of the 51 terms. So n is 51 over 2 times 2 times the first term, which is 5, plus 51 minus 1 times 2, and there you're going to get your sum to be 2805. And the third part of this question says write down the expansion of this series here. So we are given a sigma notation and they want the expansion of that. Now you have to read the instruction, and this instruction is important because it's going to help you to answer this question. They say show only the first 3 terms and the last 3 terms of the expansion. So if I substitute 1 into this formula, I am going to get 5. If I substitute 2, I'm going to get 7. Obviously, I have to add because I have a sigma notation. So if I substitute 2, I'm going to get 7. If I substitute 3, I'm going to get a 9. Now, they say the first 3 and the last term. So they're saying show only the first 3 terms and the last term of the expansion. Okay. Now, the last term will be given by 2 times 5,000, because this summation goes all the way to 5,000. So it will be 2 times 5,000 plus 3, and there I'm going to get a 1,000 and 10,003. Okay, so let me read again. Show only the first 3 terms and the last term of the expansion. Okay, that is what I've done. Now, in the next question, they say hence or otherwise. Okay, they say hence or otherwise calculate this. Now, they've just asked you to write an expansion for this, so that is exactly what I'm going to do here. So I've already written the expansion for this. It is 5 plus 7 plus 9 all the way to 10,003. Okay, now I'm adding there. Now I'm going to write the expansion for this. And again, I'm going to write the first 3 terms and the last term of the expansion. Okay, so if I substitute 1 here, I'm going to get minus 3, right? Plus, if I substitute 2 there, I'm going to get minus 5, okay? Plus, if I substitute 3 there, I'm going to get minus 7. Plus, all the way to the last term of the series, because this stops at 4,999, then when I substitute, when I say minus 2 times 4,999 minus 1, I'm going to get the last term here. And the last term here is 9,999. Now, it's a little bit tricky to see what is going on, because the only thing we are writing here is the last term of the expansion. But if you go down here, okay, what is clear at the moment is that this will cancel with this will cancel with this, but it seems like this minus 3 won't cancel with anything. Now, in order for you to see this and to understand what is happening, I'm going to write the first 3 and the last 3. Now the last 3 is 9,999 plus 1,001,1,003. Okay, so this is the expansion of this series here. Okay, that is what they asked me in part 1. Now I'm gonna have to write down, okay, the expansion for this series here. Okay, so I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to write the first three terms, and I'm also going to write the last three terms. So let's go. So I'm going to use green so that you can see. So if you take n to be 1, you're going to get minus 3, plus if n is 2, you're going to get minus 5. If n is 3, you're going to get minus 7. And the last three terms will be minus 9, 997, plus minus 9999. Now, if you look here, something interesting is going to happen. Now, this is going to cancel with this. This 7 is going to cancel with this, and this is going to cancel with this. So all the terms are going to cancel with the first series. So the terms in the second series, this series here, are going to cancel with the terms in the first series. And the only thing that won't cancel, that I'm going to be left with, is this minus 3 plus 1001 plus 1003. Okay, so this is 10,001 plus 10,003 minus 3. Now that is simple. You can punch that in your calculator, or you can do the arithmetic in your head. There you're going to get 20,001. Okay, maybe this was a tricky question, but if you couldn't understand what is happening, you could have used your sum, your sum formula. Okay, which is a little bit longer. Hence, they said hence or otherwise. Okay, so it's a matter of expanding this and expanding this and cancelling the same terms and taking the terms that didn't cancel and adding them to get this answer here. Okay. I think that was a beautiful question. Okay, so on to question 5. So question 5 is a Christmas gift. Okay, it is a very easy question. So what you are given here is the hyperbola, and they're asking you to write down the equation of the asymptote. Well, that will be straightforward. You know that x is equal to 3 and y will be equal to 2 will be the equation of the asymptote. Okay. They ask you the domain of f. Again, this is like bookwork. You know that x must be an element of reals, but since we have an asymptote at x is equal to 3, x must not be equal to 3 because our graph will be undefined there. And the third part of the question asks us to determine the coordinate of the x-intercept. X-intercept, y will be equal to 0. So if you're looking for the x-intercept, y will be equal to 0. So you'll be solving the equation. 0 is equal to minus 1 over x minus 3 plus 2. So if you solve for x there, you'll find that x is 3.5. But please make sure you read the question. They are asking for the coordinate. So you must give them the coordinate. So that will be 3.50. The coordinate of the y-intercept, now there x is equal to 0. So you're just going to come to this equation and substitute x is equal to 0. And you're going to find your y to be 2,33. Read the question. They want the coordinate. So you must give them the coordinate. So the coordinate is 2.33. You know, it's no good leaving your answer like this because you're not answering the question. And the last part of the question, they're asking you to sketch this graph. So this will be straightforward. You have calculated the x-intercept. So the first thing we do is you put your asymptote here and your asymptote here. So remember, we determined the equation of the asymptote. And remember, the x-intercept happens at 3.5 and the y-intercept happens at 2.33. Now A is negative, so this means I'm going to have something like this. So this will be the graph. So this is the graph of f. These are the y-axis, and these are the x-axis, and this is the origin. And there you're going to get your 3 marks. So this is a very straightforward question. Right, and on to question 6. Now question 6 was a little bit tricky. So in this question, you are given the graph of f, which is log. Now they give you point B, and they say B, which is K2, is a point on F. Now the moment they say this, if this is a point on F, then this point here must satisfy this equation. And that is a fact I'm going to use in the first part of the question because they're asking for the value of K. Now you can see that K is X. I know that Y is 2. So 2 is equal to the log of K base 4. Okay, now you have to solve for K then. So this means that K is equal to 4 squared, which means K is equal to 16. Okay, so if this point lies on the graph, log x base 4, then it must satisfy the equation where y is 2 and x is k. And the second part of this question was probably the trickiest. They're asking you for which values of x will this graph be between -1 and 2. Now we know that at y is equal to 2, when y is equal to 2, the value of x is equal to 16. But what is the value of x when y is equal to -1? Okay, when y is equal to -1, what is the value of x? So that we can find the x value, because the question is asking you the values of x. So the equation is y is equal to log x base 4. Now I'm telling you that y is -1 log x base 4, so you have to solve for x here. So using your log's law, it is clear that x is equal to 4 to the -1, so which means x is 1/4. So here I have 1/4. Okay, so when my y value is 1, my x value is 1/4. So for which values of x will this graph be between -1 and 2? For which values of x? X must be between, so x must be between 1/4 and 16. Okay. Now 6.3 asks us to write the inverse, the equation of the inverse of f. Okay, now you are given log x base 4, y is equal to, you know, you don't even have to think about it. That's why the examiner is saying write down. You don't even have to think about it. You know that the inverse of this graph is 4 to the power x. So remember, I'm reflecting, so the inverse will always be a reflection about the line y is equal to x. So you know you've been doing this. It's supposed to be second nature. You don't even have to think about this question. The inverse will be 4 to the power x. Now, I'm going to put a rough sketch of this graph because the last question is very tricky. I think it's best understood if the picture is in front of you. So, the inverse of this graph will look like this. Okay. So this is the inverse. Okay. Now, the last part of this question is an interesting question. They're saying, for which values of x will x times the inverse be less than 0? So by less than 0, I mean negative. So I'm taking x and I'm multiplying it by its inverse, and I want the answer to be negative. While there are two ways this could be negative. If the x-axis are positive and the inverse is negative, then if I multiply these two, you agree with me that I'm going to get a negative. But unfortunately, the graph of 4 to the power x is never negative. Okay, as you can see, it is always above the x-axis. So this graph will always be positive. So this graph is never negative. So it is always above the x-axis. So that rules out that option. Another possibility we could have is when the x-axis are negative and the graph of the inverse is positive. Now let us go and see what is happening here. Now you can see that the graph is positive. The graph is always positive because it is always above the x-axis. Okay, so the graph is always positive, and the x's are negative below 0 and they are positive above 0. So I want the portion where the x's are negative and the graph is positive, and you can see that this starts here and it goes down forever. So from 0 going down, okay, I will have a positive graph and negative x-axis. But from 0 above, both of them will be positive, and I don't want that. So the answer you're going to give your examiner is x is less than 0. So the values of x they are looking for in the last part of the question is x is less than 0. Because at x, when x is less than 0, the x's are negative and the graph is positive. The product here will be negative, which is what we want. Quite a tricky question, so make sure you're thinking about it. If it's causing headache for you, just skip it. It is only 2 marks. Right. So let's move on to the next question. I think this was a beautiful question. I don't know about you, but it's quite an interesting question. And on to question 7. And as you can see, question 7 here, you are given the parabola and the straight line. So because this is an exam review, I won't read this. You're going to read this. Please make sure you read. Because this is an exam review, I'm not reading it. I'm going to jump straight to the questions. Now, the first part of the question asks us to determine or to write down the coordinate of B and D. Now, if you look at B and D, they are your x-intercept, and remember your x-intercept of they are the x-intercept of your parabola. So that means y is equal to 0. So if you take, if you take this equation, right? I didn't want to hide. So if you take this equation and equate it to 0, then you're going to get your x-intercept. It is already factorized for you. You're going to have -4 this side. You're going to have 6 this side. Now, please read the question and give the examiners what they want. They are saying determine the coordinate. -4 and 6 is not the coordinate, but the coordinate is -4, 0, and 6, 0. Okay. Now, the second part of the question wants us to calculate the coordinate of C. Okay, now C is the turning point. Now remember, that we have got here we have got the axis of symmetry. This is the axis of symmetry. This point here is actually halfway between -4 and 6. So if you say -4 plus 6 divided by 2, you're going to get the x value of 1, which means this symmetry is at x is equal to 1. And how do I find the y value? Now I know that the x value is 1. How do I find the y value? It lies on this graph. I can take this 1 and substitute it to the graph of f, and I'm going to find the y value of -25. Okay. The third part of this question asks us the range of f. Now remember, the range is all the possible y values the function can take. Now the minimum value this function can take is minus 25. That is the minimum. Then it starts increasing from the minimum because this is a spiraling graph. So the range, all possible y values will be, so the range will be given by y should be greater than or equal to minus 25. Okay, or you can say y is an element from 25 to infinity. Now I'm using a square bracket because 25 is defined here. It is defined here, so it is part of the function. So the function is defined at 25 to infinity. So infinity, we always use a round bracket, but remember the range is all possible y values. Okay, now the fourth part of this question gets a little bit exciting because it requires us to remember paper 2 material. Now we are given theta to be 14.04 and the tangent to f at t is perpendicular to AE. Now the first thing they ask you is to determine the gradient of AE. Now, do you have any points you can use to determine the gradient of AE? Well, no, you don't have any point because you don't have the equation of the straight line at that moment in time. But you are given the inclination, you are given this angle theta. Now you're going to have to remember that tan theta is equal to m, which is the gradient of AE. So tan of 14.04 will be the gradient of AE. So if you round off two decimal places, the gradient of AE will be equal to 0.25 or 1/4. What is the question? The question is asking us to calculate the gradient of AE. All right. Now, the next exciting part is they're asking me to calculate the coordinate of T. Now, remember, we've got a tangent to F at T. Now, if we have got the tangent at T, there's something you must remember. So, we have got a tangent here. Okay, we have got a tangent here. Now, this is the point of contact between the parabola and the tangent. Now, what you have to remember for this question is that at the point of contact, the gradient of the tangent will be equal to the gradient of that parabola. Okay, the gradient of the tangent will be equal to the gradient of that parabola. Now, what is the gradient of the parabola? Okay, the gradient of the parabola is given by the derivative. The gradient of the parabola is given by the derivative. So, at the moment, I have f, which is the parabola given by this equation, and this can be written as x squared minus 2x minus 24, which means the gradient is equal to 2x minus 2. Now, this gradient here must be equal to the gradient of the tangent. Now, remember, the tangent is perpendicular to AE. At the moment, the gradient of AE is 1/4. Okay, the gradient of AE is 1/4. Now, if the tangent is perpendicular to AE, then the gradient of the tangent, so the gradient of the tangent must be equal to -4. So what does that mean? That means that now at t, -4, which is the gradient of the tangent, will be equal to the gradient of the parabola, which is 2x minus 2. This means if you solve for x here, you're going to find that your x is -1. Okay. Now, the examiner is looking for the coordinate. So you have got the x value. You need to find the y value. Now, the y value, if I know that x is equal to -1, then I can find y by substituting in any of the equation, the tangent or the parabola. Now, at the moment, I don't want to waste time. I don't have the full equation of the tangent, so I'm going to use the equation of the parabola. So y will be equal to -1 all squared -2 -1 -24. So your y will be -21. So the coordinate of t is -1 -21. So the key point here was to remember that at the point of contact, the gradient of the tangent is equal to the gradient of the parabola. Okay. Now they are saying a straight line G parallel to AE cut F at K, okay, and at R. Okay, calculate the x coordinate of R. Now here they are saying it cuts, okay, they are saying it cuts, so I wanted to highlight that. It cut F at K and R. That means that is the point of intersection. Okay, that means that is the point of intersection. So K and R is the point of intersection between F and G. F and G. Yes, F and G. But at this moment in time, I don't have the equation of G. Well, but G is parallel to AE. So I'm going to have Y, so they're going to have the same gradient. I'm going to have 1 over 4x plus C. Now, they told me that G passes through K. So this means that I can find C because -9 is equal to 1 over 4 times -3 plus C, which means C is equal to -33 over 4. So which means G of x is equal to 1 over 4x minus 33 over 4. Now this is the equation of G. It cut the parabola at K and R, and they want the coordinate of R. This is the point of intersection. This means that this means that f of x must be equal to G of x at K and R. Okay, so what are you going to have there? You're going to have f of x, which is 2x, right? So which is x squared minus 2x minus 24 is equal to G, which is 1 over 4, which is 1 over 4x minus 33 over 4. Okay, so this is the equation we are required to solve. Now you're going to have x squared, and you're going to bring the x's to one side of the equation and the constant to one side of the equation, and there you're going to have the quadratic equation, and it will be a complicated quadratic equation you're going to get. So if you want to, you may factorize it, but it's quite hectic. You have got the quadratic formula. I'll just advise you to use the quadratic formula there. So you're going to get your 2x values. If you use your quadratic formula, your x will be -3, or your x will be 5,25 there. -3 belongs here. They told us belongs to K, which means this other x here will belong to R. So the x coordinate of R is 5.25. So as long as we are able to solve this here, then use the quadratic formula, then find the values of x, then you will be fine. Okay, now I think from this question from 7.4 right to 7.5 was a little bit tricky, and it required quite a bit of thinking. Okay, but anyways, such questions are expected. So let's move on to question 8. And question 8 is based on financial mathematics. So what they are saying here, they're saying a farmer bought a tractor for 980 So at this moment in time, so this is the present value. The value of the tractor depreciate. That is very important because that will determine our formula annually at a rate of 9.2 on a reducing balance method. Okay, so that means that the future value or the book value is equal to present value into 1 minus I to the power n. Okay, so what they want here, they want the book value of the tractor after 7 years. So the future value after 7 years, if we take into account depreciation at a reducing balance method. So there, what you're going to have for the book value will be equal to what? So the book value will be equal to 980,000 multiplied by 1 minus 9.2 to the power 7. If you punch this in your calculator, you're going to get 498,685.81. And the second part of the question asks us how many years, so they are looking for t, will it take for an amount of 75,000 to accrue 253.50 cents in an account earning an interest rate of 6.8% per annum compounded quarterly. Okay, please don't fall into the trap. It compounded quarterly. So I have a present value of 75,000 and I'm accumulating this and I want to get this amount here. There are no regular payments here. This is just a single payment. So what does this mean? This means that I'm looking for the value of t such that 75,000 multiplied by 1 plus 6.8. Now this is per annum compounded quarterly, which means per quarter I'm going to have 6.8% over 4. Now if I write t here, this means whatever t I'm going to get will be in quarters. Okay, whatever t I'm going to get here will be in quarters because my rate is in quarters. Now, if I multiply this t by 4, that means now t will be in years. Okay, now I feel like I'm confusing people. Now let me write this nicely. Okay, so what I'm actually doing, so let's do the accumulation. So I'm saying 75,000 into 1 plus 6.8 divided by 4. So this 6.8% divided by 4 will be my rate per quarter. Okay, will be my rate per quarter. Okay, now if this is per quarter, I also want my time to be in terms of quarters. If I only put t here, okay, if I only put t here, the final answer I'm going to get will be quarters. Okay, will be in terms of quarters. But if I put 4t here, the final answer I'm going to get will be in terms of quarters, but t will be years. Okay, so t will be years. So if I only put t, the final answer I'm going to get is quarters, and t will be quarters. Okay, if I put 4t, the final answer will be in quarters, but t, so by the final answer I mean 4t, it will be in quarters, but t will be in years since I multiplied by 4. So please be very careful there. So so this accumulated is going to give me 116,253. Okay, so I'm going to take this, divide by this. Okay, maybe let me highlight so that you can see. Going to take this and divide it here, and I'm going to add the bracket here. So what am I going to have there? I'm going to have 1.017 to the power 14. Now this is in 40 is quarters, but t is years. So this one was a little bit tricky. You had to be careful. So this will be equal to, if you do the division, you're going to get 1.55 not 4,667. Okay, now you're going to take the natural log on both sides, then divide by the log of 1.017, and I'm going to get 4t to be 25.99. Now this is quarters, okay? So this is 25.99 quarters. But in order to find the t, because the examiner is saying how many years, you cannot give your answer in terms of quarters in order if you want to get 4 marks here. So you've still got to take this answer and divide by 4. So if you divide by 4, you're going to get 6.49 years. Okay, I suspect most students messed this one up. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Now the next question, they say Tabo wanted to save 450 as a deposit to buy a house on 30 June. Okay, so wanted to save 450 as a deposit. So to buy a house on 30 June. So if you think about this, I'm going to save up I'm saving up for my deposit of, well, I'm not Tabo, but he is saving up for a deposit of 400, excuse me, a deposit of 450,000. So in future, he wants 450,000. So this is going to be a future value annuity. So they're saying he deposited a fixed amount of money at the end of every month into an account earning an interest of 8.35% per annum compounded monthly. His first deposit was made on the 31st of July 2013. So you can see that at the beginning here, I'm going to save up in order to have my deposit to buy a house or whatever, or a car, in this particular case, a house. Okay, his first deposit was made here, and his 60th deposit on 30 June 2018. So what they're actually telling you here, they're telling you you have 60 payments. So I'm saving up 60 payments. I'm saving up to get this accumulated value. Now here I'm making regular payments. So because I'm making regular payments, I cannot use the straightforward accumulation formula, but this will be an annuity. Here they want the amount he deposited monthly. Now because I want the 450 in future, I'm going to use the future value annuity. So in this particular question, we have to solve for x such that x times 1 plus 8.35% divided by 12 per month. Okay, how many months? 60. Okay, 60 regular payments minus 1. Now be careful, this whole thing is in bracket, and I have to divide by 8.35% over 12, and I need to get a future value of 450,000. So you have to solve for x there, which I think most of you can do. You'll find that your x is 6068.69. Okay. Now they move on and they say Tabo bought a house costing 1,500,000. Okay, and use his saving as a deposit. So if Thabo is going to pay a deposit of 450,000, that means his loan now will be 1,500,000 minus 450,000, and that is going to give you 1,050,000. Okay, this will be the loan amount. Okay, so he obtained a home loan for the balance. So this is the balance of the purchase price at an interest rate of 12% per annum, compounded monthly over 25 years. He made his first monthly installment of 11,058.85 towards the loan on 31 July 2018. So what they're asking you the outstanding balance on 30 June 2039, and they are helping you. They say 21 years after the loan was granted. So they're looking for the loan outstanding. Now there are two ways you can do this. You can either use the prospective method or the retrospective method. Okay, I'm going to use the retro, but the prospective is perfectly fine. So the outstanding balance after 21 years will be given by the loan amount accumulated at an interest rate of 12% per annum compounded monthly over 21 years. Now this is monthly. This must also be in months minus all future payments. 11058.85 1 plus 12% over 12, 21 times 12 minus 1, and divide by 12% over 12. And you're going to punch that whole thing in your calculator. Okay, then there you're going to get the value of 419,952.39. So this is the loan outstanding. I'm sure people that were doing this question, they just wanted to disappear. It's not a difficult question, but there are small things there and there to catch you. So you have to think about what you're writing rather than just quoting formulas. Okay, now the last part of the question is asking us the interest Thabo will have paid over the first 21 years of the loan. Okay, now I'm going to use a different color so that you can see. Now that will be given by the total payments over 21 years, which is 11,058.85 times 12 times 21. Remember, this is a monthly payment, but over a 21 period, minus the actual loan, okay, which is 1,050,000 minus the loan outstanding after 21 years, which is 419,952.39. And if you punch this whole thing in your calculator, you're going to get the interest of 215,672.59. Okay, so that was a question. Now, I know that most students get confused with this kind of questions where they are required to read long stories. You know, this is 16 marks. Okay, so if you see that you are confused, you're getting your numbers wrong, you punch it, skip it. Okay, skip it and move on to the next question. You will see the next question is a lovely question. It is a Christmas gift. Now, the next question is based on calculus. And the first question they ask is a famous first principles question. Now here, as long as you remember that your derivative using first principle is given by the limit as h tends towards naught of f of x plus h minus f of x divided by h, then you would have been fine. So substitute your function, your functional values, and simplify. Make sure you do not drop the limit as h approaches 0 as you please, but you drop it when you are required to drop it, when you are actually substituting h is equal to 0. Okay, and there you're going to get your derivative to be what? To be 4x minus 3. Okay, so I should have used an equal to there. Okay, and 9.2 is a beautiful, simple question. Okay, so remember the rules for this one. It's straightforward. So I'm going to have 20x to the power 4 minus 24 x to the power 3 plus 3. Okay, now these questions, these two questions are very straightforward, but most people won't score full marks. I can assure you, because here the notation get a little bit tricky. So if you are sloppy with your notation, you're going to lose marks. You see here, I was getting a bit sloppy with my notation because this is wrong. I'm supposed to tell my examiner that dy over dx is equal to this value. So if you are sloppy with the notation here, you won't get the full 12 marks as easy as it is. So again here, you must be very careful with your notation. So you must keep dx as we are simplifying, okay? So minus x to the power 1 over 3 over 2 plus 1 over 9 x to the minus 2. Now when you find the derivative, you're going to drop the dx and you're going to say equal to. Okay, and you're going to say equal to. So what are you going to have there? You're going to have x to the power minus 3 over 2 over 6 plus what? Actually minus 2 over 9 x to the power minus 3. Okay, you can simplify your answer if you want. Okay, you can simplify your answer if you want. 2 minus 1 over 6, the square root of x cubed, minus 2 over 9x cubed. So nothing major here. You're just using rules. Okay, rules of differentiation. Obviously we don't want x at the bottom. Okay, we don't want x to be under the square root. We want the form a x to the power b, so that we can say ba to the power ba times x to the power b minus 1. So we always want to do this. So that's why I changed this to 1 over 3. And this here is just exponent. Remember, ab to the power p is equal to a to the power p, b to the power p. Again, a over b to the power p is equal to a to the power p over b to the power p. Okay, which is what I'm using here. Okay, but I don't have to explain this. This is an exam review and I'm in a hurry. Okay, so this was supposed to be straightforward, 12 marks in the back. Okay, let's move on to the next question. Now the next question is testing a cubic function. So you're given the cubic function h of x is equal to x cubed plus bx, and we are given the picture here. Now the first thing they ask you is to determine the values of a and b. So they want you to show that a is this value here and b is this value here. Wow, you have h of x is equal to a x cubed plus bx squared. Now, if you look at point B lies on this graph of h. So this means point B must satisfy this equation. So this means B must satisfy this equation. So this means when I substitute 4 in this equation, I must get 32. So what am I going to have there? I'm going to have 32 is equal to A times 4 cubed plus B times 4 squared. And there I'm going to have 32 is equal to 64A plus 16B. So I'm going to say this is equation 1. But if you look at B is a maximum. Okay, B is a maximum. And what is happening at maximum? The gradient is equal to 0. That means the derivative is equal to 0. Okay, so what is the derivative? It is 3ax squared plus 2bx. Okay, now the 3a times 4 plus 2b times 4 is equal to 0. So 3a times 4 squared plus 2b times 4 is equal to 0. And there you're going to have 96a plus 16b. Now you have equation 1 and equation 2. You simply have to solve them simultaneously. So if you solve a simultaneous equation, you're going to find these two values of a and b. So the second part of the question asks us to calculate the coordinate of A. Now, if you look at A, it is the x-intercept. Remember, at the x-intercept, y is equal to 0. Okay, so what does this mean? So I've got A and I've got B. That means minus x cubed plus 6x squared is equal to 0. Which means x squared times minus x plus 6 is equal to 0, which means x is equal to 0, which is this x-intercept, or x is equal to 6, which will be this here. Okay, now make sure you answer the question. The examiner is looking for the coordinate, so you have to give them the coordinate. Otherwise, you will lose a mark. Okay. Now, I've calculated the coordinate of A, and now they say write down the value of x for which h is increasing. Now, this question here, there are two ways to do it. Either you just look at the graph or you do it algebraically. Since I know that most of you struggle with just looking at the graph, I'm going to do it algebraically. Now remember, for x to be increasing, then the derivative must be greater than 0. Okay, so if the derivative is greater than 0, then that means minus 3x squared plus 12x must be greater than 0. So you're going to find your critical values here. You're going to find your critical values here, and you're going to divide by this negative, and you're going to have 3x squared minus 12x is less than 0, which means x is, so the values of x for which h is increasing is when x is between 0 and 4. Now, you could have just looked at the graph, because any function will increase if, as the y values are increasing, the x values are also increasing. Now you can see in this interval here, as the x values are increasing, the y values are increasing. So in this interval from 0 to 4, we have an increasing function. The gradient of this function is positive. Now please do not include the 4 and the 0, because at that point the gradient is equal to 0. Okay, the gradient is equal to 0. So here is you're just solving an inequality here. Okay, so you will find your zeros and find the values of x for which this function is less than 0. But if you are able to look at the graph, please use the graph. And now they're asking you for which values of x will it be concave down. So it will be concave down. It will be concave down if the second derivative is less than 0. Okay, now the second derivative is minus 6x plus 12, and I want this to be less than 0. Okay, so which means 6x should be greater than 12, which means x should be greater than 2. So these are the values. Now the last part of this question was probably the trickiest part. They are asking you the value of k for which this equation here will have 1 negative and 2 positive distinct roots. Now don't freak out here. If you look at this equation here, you will see that this portion here is just the original graph shifted 1 unit to the right. So you will see if I take the original graph and shift it 1 unit to the right, then I'm going to have a y-intercept at 7. Okay, so what is actually going to happen, I'm taking this graph and I'm shifting it 1 unit to the right. So let me do the shift. I'm going to have something like this. So this coordinate here will be 1, 0. This here will be 5, 32. This here will be, right? This here will be 7, 0. So what the examiners are asking me, they're asking me, how must I shift this graph? Please bear in mind that we have a y-intercept of 7 here. So the examiners are asking me, how must I shift this graph? So how must I shift this graph? You can see in this graph, I'm subtracting k, okay, which means, so I'm subtracting k. So how must I shift this graph up or down so that I have 1 negative and 2 distinct positive roots? So 2 distinct, the word distinct means they're different. Okay, so what am I going to do there? So you can see if you move this graph up, okay, you'll never achieve the criteria they are looking for. But if you move it down 7 units, okay, 7 units down, if you move it 7 units down, it's going to land up here, okay? It's going to land up here. So if you move it 7 units down, it's going to land up here in the origin. Now here, this will be at 0, okay? You can see that I'm going to have 3 distinct roots, but 3 distinct roots, which is 0, this one, and the other one here. I want 2 distinct roots and that are positive and 1 that is negative. At this moment in time, this graph is at 0. I shifted it 7 units down. If I shift it below 0, okay, that is when it will start to have so if I shift it below 0, that is when it will start to satisfy the condition, because it will have this 1 negative root and it will have 2 distinct roots. So when k is greater than 7, because when it's equal to 7, the y-intercept will be at 0. So we won't have the condition. But when it's greater than 7, do not include the 7 because it will be at the origin. But when it's greater than 7, it will have 3 distinct roots. 1 will be negative and root. But it doesn't stop here. Now, do you agree that if I keep on shifting it, till this turning point here, if I keep on shifting it till this turning point here of 532 is here, okay, till this turning point is here, so 5 is 0. If I keep on shifting it if I keep on shifting it down, I've already established that k must be greater than 7. But if I keep on shifting it for all values greater than 7, it will eventually reach this point here, okay? And at this point here, you can see that I'm going to have 2 equal root and 1 negative root, and that is not what I want. So what happens for it to fail is that I had to shift it 32 units down. I shifted it 32 units down. But if I move it up just a little bit from 5 to 0, just a little bit after shifting it 32 units, then it will go back to satisfy the condition of 1 negative root and 2 distinct positive roots. So k must be between 32 and 7. Then this graph will definitely have 2 distinct positive roots and 1 negative root. So I know this diagram is messy. If you didn't understand this, I am very sorry. This is an exam review. I am rushing through. Okay, so but when we have exam sessions, we won't be rushing through. We won't be rushing. We will just we'll have more time to explain. I'll have more time to explain to you how to tackle such questions. Okay, so that was a difficult question, and it's 3 marks. So wise student would have probably looked at this and simply move on to the next question. And question 11 is a little bit tricky. So question 11 is asking us to calculate the average speed at which the person must travel home to keep his cost as low as possible. Now, cost as low as possible, that means I want cost to be a minimum. Okay. It means I want cost to be a minimum. But unfortunately here, I don't have the cost expression. So that is what I have to determine in this question. Now we have the cost of petrol and the cost of the leaking water. Now the cost of petrol is this expression per kilometer. Okay, per kilometer. Now going back home is 20 kilometers. So if it's this amount per kilometers, that means I've got 20 times 1,2 plus x over 4,000 plus, now the cost of leaking water is 1.60 per hour. Okay, but I don't know how long it took for this person from where he was to going back home, because if you look at the question, they're looking for the average speed at which this person must travel home, which is x. Okay, now the cost of water is 1.60 per hour. Okay, now you have to remember, there's something that you have to remember here, which I think was a bit unfair, because now you have to remember that speed is equal to distance over time. Okay, so what does that mean? That means time is equal to distance over speed. So which means the time going back home. So the time I traveled back home is the distance, which is 20 over the speed, which is x. So this is the time. But the cost of the water, you are given a rate of 1.6 per hour. So 1.6 times the time, which is 20 over x. Okay, so this is your cost expression. So I want cost to be a minimum. So that means I must differentiate this and equate it to 0. Now differentiating this should present no problem at all. If you differentiate and equate it to 0, you're going to get your x to be plus or minus 80 kilometers per hour. But which one do I take? Do I take the plus or the minus? Well, you know that you have to take the plus, but since we have something called the second derivative test, I'm sure the examiner would love to see that in order to prove that your answer is a minimum. Okay, now the second derivative here will be 32 times 2x to the minus 3. So if I substitute 80, my derivative will be greater than 0, which means 80 is a minimum. If I substitute minus 80, my derivative will be less than 0, which means minus 80 is the maximum, but I want the minimum. The cost must be as low as possible. Okay, so you must show this to your examiner that 80 kilometers per hour is indeed a minimum. Okay, so that was quite a tricky question. I hope you managed. And the last question here doesn't make things easier. Okay, now in this question, we are told that A and B are independent events. Now remember, if A and B are independent events, that means the probability of A and B is equal to the probability of A times the probability of B. We are given the probability of A and B to be 0.3. And now be very careful here of the notation. It is not the probability of B. It is the probability of only B, which is different from the probability of B. So please read your question here. Now, the first question they ask you is they're asking you, are A and B mutually exclusive? Motivate your answer. Well, no, they are not mutually exclusive. Otherwise, the probability of A and B will be equal to 0. And in this case, the probability of A and B is equal to 0.3. Now, the second part of the question is asking you to find the probability of only A. Now, this question was a little bit tricky. If you try and just do it as it is, you will run into some trouble. I think a Venn diagram will be helpful. So what I've got here, I've got A, I've got B. Okay, that is not, this Venn diagram is very small and I want to be able to put my numbers. Okay, so the probability of A and B is 0.3 and the probability of B only is 0.2. I'm going to say that this is equal to X. Now they're looking for X because X is the probability of only A. Now A and B are independent. That means the probability of A, which is this whole portion here. So this is A, this is B. So the probability of A, which is this whole portion here, so X plus 0.3 multiplied by the probability of B, which is this portion here, okay, which is this portion here, 0.5 must be equal to the probability of A and B, which is 0.3. That because A and B are independent. So here you have to solve for X. And you'll find that your X is 0.3. So the probability of only A is 0.3. But the probability of A is 0.5. So you had to be a little bit careful here. So the second part is asking the probability of not A or not B. So not A or not B. Again, this is a little bit tricky. You have to use your Venn diagram. Okay, so already I've got that this is 0.3 because probabilities add up to 1. That means outside I have 0.2. Now they are saying not A. Okay, not A. That means everything, you're going to shade everything that is not A. Okay, you're going to shade everything that is not A, and there I'm shading it. Okay. Right. And now we are going to shade everything that is not B. Now I'm shading everything that is not B. Okay. Now I'm shading everything that is not B. Now remember, O means everything. Everything. So you're going to add everything shaded green and everything that has got purple lines. Okay, so that will be 0.2, 0.3, and 0.2. So the answer there will be 0.7. So the probability of not A or not B is 0.7. Again, this question was a little bit tricky. I hope you understood what was happening. And now the last part of the question, which was also a bit tricky. Now they're saying a teacher has 5 different poetry books, 4 drama, and 3 different novels. She must arrange this 12 book from left to right. Now the first question, which is very simple, but I think most people overthink it. They say, write down the probability that a novel will be the first book placed on the shelf. Well, what they're simply asking you there, they're asking you the probability of picking a novel. Simple as that. So I have 3 novels over 12. Then my answer will be 1 over 4. Okay. The second part of the question says, calculate the number of different ways these 12 books can be placed on a shelf if any book can be placed in any position. Now, these books are different, although they are the same category, but they are different. So I have 12 distinct books in this particular case. So the number of ways in which I can arrange these books is 12 factorial. Okay, which is a very huge number, which is 479,001,600. And the last part of this question, now I'm gonna go in slow motion in this question because this question is extremely difficult. Now they are saying calculate the probability that the poetry book is placed in the first position. The 3 novels are placed next to each other and the drama is placed in the last position. Okay, now this question is tricky. You know, if you are clever, then you will immediately see the 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 permutation we are supposed to write here, but it is not obvious, unfortunately. So I'm gonna go in slow motion here. So the best way to think about doing this question is, I have 5 different poetry books. They are different. So I'm going to say poetry 1, poetry 2, poetry 3, poetry 4, poetry 5. And I have 4 different drama books. So I'm going to say drama 1, drama 2, drama 3, and drama 4. And I have 3 different novels. So I'm going to have novel 1, novel 2, novel 3. Now, that means I have 12 spaces. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay, because there are 12 books. Now, I want the poetry book to be placed in the first position. Well, let's say poetry 1 is in the first position, okay? And I want the last book to be what? To be the drama. So let's say drama 1 is in the last position. Then I want the 3 novels to be together. Okay, so if I had to take the poetry 1 and drama 1, then how many how many how many how many arrangements can I have here? I can see that this one is fixed, it is 1, and this one is fixed, it is 1. So this will definitely be poetry 1, and this will definitely be drama 1. So that means I am left with, because these are grouped, okay, these novel books are grouped. That means I'm left with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That means I'm left with 8 spaces, but this group here so this group can move around these 8 spaces. So I'm going to have 8 factorial multiplied by the 3 grouped novel books can also move in between, okay, inside this group here. They can also be shuffled around. So I'm going to have 3 factorial then. But this answer is only true if I have P1 and P1 at the beginning and D1 at the end. Okay, now any poetry book can be at the beginning, right? And any drama book can be at the, it's actually happening here. I can have P1 along with drama 1. That is going to give you 8 times 3, right? 8 factorial times 3 factorial. I can have P1 along with D2. I can have P1 along with D3. I can have P1 along with D4. Okay, now all those will be 8 factorial times 3 factorial. And you can see I repeated them 4 times. Okay, I repeated them 4 times. So I'm going to multiply this by 4. But I've only considered P1 with different drama books. I can have P2 with drama 1. Okay, I can have P2 with drama 1. I can have P2 with drama 2. I can have P2 with drama 3. I can have P2 with drama 4. Okay, that is going to give me this combination, but now it will be for the second time. Okay, I can have P3 with drama 1, P3 with drama 2, P3 with drama 3, P3 with drama 4. This will happen for the third time. Then I can have P4 with drama 1, P4 with drama 2, P4 with drama 3, P4 with drama 4. That is going to happen for the fourth time. Because I have 5 drama books now, I'm going to do the same process, but P5 with drama 1. So all in all, this must be multiplied by 5. So in fact, I've got 5 times 4 times 8 factorial times 3 factorial. There is another way to think about this, but I think that will probably confuse you. So these are the number of ways I can do the arrangement. Now they are looking for the probability, so I need to divide this whole thing by 12. Okay, so I need to divide this whole thing by 12. Okay, and you punch the whole thing in your calculator, you're going to get 1 over 99, which is 0.01. The last questions were really difficult, and I suspect most people were tired and they were unable to think. So the probability question, the calculus application, the cubic function, these were some of the trickiest questions, and unfortunately they were towards the end of the paper. And I'm sure most of you were tired, but I hope you managed to collect most of the marks at the beginning of the paper. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.